What could cause an entire group of people to decide that war is the only option for freedom? Find out next. Alright, welcome to Learning Stuff with Sprayberry, where we make social studies fun, easy, and educational. Today's topic, the acts that led to revolution. To start off with this, we need to review a term, mercantilism. Hard to say sometimes, but fairly easy to understand. To start off with, you have a home country. And this home country decides to set up little colonies all around the place. Now these colonies ship things to the home country that the home country can make money off of. It might be natural resources like wood, coal, iron ore, gold, silver, things like that that's easy for it to make money off of, or it can be just flat out lumber that country then produces something else with. Now mercantilism was avoided for most of American colonialism. That is until the end of the French and Indian War. Now, to review the French and Indian War, British colonists and French colonists get into a fight over land. Both sides try to recruit Native Americans to fight them, but England decides to back its colonies by sending troops over. These troops come all the way from England to the colonies, where they have to be then fed and housed. This leaves England broke.
She take my money!
England decides that it's going to make up for it by taxing the colonies directly. Get that cash flow coming in quickly, as opposed to relying on mercantilism to just naturally allow the resources to stumble in. So let's get into some of these laws that England passed because of this French and Indian War. The first one is the Proclamation of 1763. Now this proclamation is a line that follows basically the Appalachian Mountains. It separates the land that the colonists could live on, from that line to the east, from the land that they weren't allowed to live on, from that land to the west. Colonists who crossed over that land lost their right to protection from the colonies. They lost their right to be protected by colonial soldiers. And they were oftentimes told they had to move back to the other side of that line. This upset colonists because they'd spent all their time and money and effort building a new home out there only to be told you've got to pack it up and move it back. This is before the days of mobile homes. So, that house you just built, leave it, get out. Alright, we got the Sugar Act of 1764. Now this replaces a previous law called the Molasses Act of 1733. And it places a tax on sugar that comes from colonial colonies. Comes from British colonies. It actually lowered the cost of sugar, but a lot of the colonists didn't like it because secretly hidden into its little confines were rules placing taxes on things like lumber and other supplies. So England was taxing them, but also sneaking extra taxes in on top of it. Alright, another act is the Stamp Act. This one sounds ridiculous, and it is. What it means is that if you want to buy an official government document, you have to pay to have somebody go and stamp it. Now the price of these stamps depended on the documents. A deed to a land was based on how much land you'd purchased. The more land you bought, the more the same stamp cost. If you were a lawyer, filing your paperwork to prove that you were an attorney cost you money. But it also hit in weird ways. Newspapers had to have a stamp to prove that they were official newspapers. That's bad enough, but then they started to stamp the only thing that colonists had for recreation, playing cards. So if you wanted a deck of cards, they stamped the deck of cards, and you had to pay for that stamp. Now the Stamp Act was passed in 1764. Yeah, 1764. Moving on, we've got the Currency Act of 1764. This one's a weird one because in our country we don't think of it this way. But all money is based off the idea that it represents value. Now England was not happy at the time because some colonies had started to print their own money because they couldn't get a hold of British currency because it's all the way, in Britain. So the colonies started to print their own, and they began to use their own currency instead of British currency. England decided, nope. So what they did is they put a law out that says you can't create your own. all currency must come from the crown in England. This made money scarce because if it's coming from England to here, it's extremely hard to get money over here. This led some people to going into debt because they simply couldn't pay for the goods because there wasn't actually enough paper around to do it. To continue, 1765 was not a fun year for the colonists. England also passed the Quartering Act, which was a way for them to be able to keep and support troops in the colonies. They required that anybody in the colonies feed and shelter colonial soldiers, meaning those soldiers could just come in your house, I need a place to stay, and you had to let them in. This is a problem because soldiers are not notoriously known for being well behaved.
Down to Electric Avenue, and then we'll take it higher.
So a lot of these soldiers would show up in a house, eat them out of house and home, break a few things, and then move on when their shift happened, when they moved to a new area. That left a lot of homeowners very upset. Up next, we got the Townsend Act of 1767. Now, these are a series of laws passed 100% for the reason of raising money. Now, this money that's being raised would be used to help maintain the loyalty of judges and governors in the colonies. It also passed some pretty nasty things against New York because New York wasn't really enforcing the Quartering Act like it should, at least according to the Crown. Finally, this act also had a secret little bylaw written into the bottom that said England has the right to do whatever it wants to the colonies, no matter what. Colonists were extremely mad about this because these laws are being passed without any say from them. If you live in England, you have representatives that go to Parliament to talk on your behalf. The colonists don't. Colonists have no one representing them in Parliament. So all these rules and laws that are getting passed, they don't get a say in at all. Up next, we have the Tea Act of 1773. Now, this law is designed to kind of calm things down a little bit with the colonists. What it did is it made tea cheaper. It lowered the cost of tea by about half. And this law was gonna make them happier, but it had a sneaky part built in. See, England had a major shipping company, the East India Trading Company. This company was going bankrupt. It was falling apart. But the owners of this company were friends with the king. So what the king did is he cut the price on tea. Colonists could only buy from the East India Trading Company. Imagine being told that you could only buy from one store forever, no matter what. That's how the colonists felt. They actually started to boycott British tea and paid more to have tea smuggled in from other countries. One particular group of citizens took to the streets in Boston. They dressed as Mohawk Native Americans, ran aboard a ship carrying East India tea, and threw it overboard. This is like, in today's term, $1 million worth of tea. They just dumped it overboard as a big old middle finger to the king and his friends. England did not like this. They soon decided, that's how you want to play? We'll play. In 1774, England decided it's time to pay. Literally, it's time to pay for that tea you threw overboard. And they passed the Intolerable Acts. Now, these acts were broken into several different parts. One part shut down the Boston port until the tea that was thrown overboard is paid for. The second part shut down the Massachusetts state government until they got their act together. It put Massachusetts as a direct royal colony, meaning that any and all rules have to come directly from the king to be official. This put Massachusetts in a tough spot because it's a couple months back and forth for it to get rules. The Intolerable Acts included a few rules to make sure that people were being treated fairly. The Administration of Justice Act was passed, which says that anybody from England who is found committing a crime in the colonies has to be sent back to England for trial. This is for twofold. One, it's thought that they wouldn't receive a fair trial in the colonies because people are mad at England, so they would be sent back to England for trial. The other half of this, though, is that it made the colonists think that they're never going to get justice. They're just going back to England so they can walk free and do whatever they want. So it led to an animosity where neither side really trusted the other to make sure that justice was being done. Now, all of these acts added to the discontentment that the colonists felt with England. With each act being added, the colonists felt they could trust England less and less. So they felt that their home country didn't have their best interests at heart. This continued discontentment grew and grew and grew until the colonists decided that they had to do something about it. They sent delegates from all the colonies to discuss, and they came up with a plan. Send a strongly worded letter to England saying, hey, knock it off, guys. Can't we figure this out? That letter did not work. So the colonists decided to do something else. The colonists eventually decided that the war is their only option. And all of these acts are the cause between it. They lead to the American Revolutionary War. Alright guys, thanks for joining me today as we discuss the acts that led to the revolution. If you liked what you saw today, do me a favor and click the like button. It lets me know that this is a decent content to keep going with. If you like this video and you want to see more of it, click subscribe. I drop new videos every Monday, so keep an eye out for them. Again, thanks for joining me. This has been Learning Stuff with Sprayberry, where we try to make social studies fun, easy, and educational.